Got it?
Not yet.
Okay.
I'll let you know, man. I got Facebook up too on another system.
But mostly you're live now.
All right. Here we go. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Freedom Friday Forum here of June 24th, 2022. I am Baba Mosi Matsimila, President of the Woodson Banneker Jackson Bay Division, UNIA-ACL RC2020, and I am the co-host for this forum. And we have a very interesting forum here tonight with two very interesting people, and you will be getting a lot of knowledge of what's happening, not only at Moses, but hopefully we'll have some folks on from some other cemetery areas, and if they do get on, we'll have a discussion with them as well. So the other co-host is Baba Congo Africa, Vice President of the Division 330. He may not be on yet because he may have been running late from the doctor or something. But anyway, we will move on. But you know, this is something promoted by the UNIA-ACL RC2020. And we do have to let you know who we are, from whence we came, and what it's all about as a group founded by Marcus Mosiah Garvey. All right, and first I will do an opening with the official pledge to the flag, the RBG, the red, black, and green, promulgated in 1920 by the UNIA-ACL under Garvey. So let me say this, I will recite it. You don't have to do it. I know some of you know it completely, but for time's sake, let me do it completely. I commit my body, mind, and spirit to the protection.
You muted, Baba Mosi.
I just noticed, you know, my brother, I keep doing this. I got to keep my hand away from this keyboard or something. Yes. The official UNIA pledge to the flag. I commit my body, mind, and spirit to the protection, defense, and security of the red, black, and green. I dedicate my life to the redemption of Mother Africa and the liberation of her scattered Black children. I accept for myself and my descendants the teachings of universal African nationalism, and I promise that our children will be instilled with the purpose and knowledge of themselves as African people, in order that the cause of our struggle will neither falter nor fail until all Black people are free and united through one God, one aim, one destiny. Of course, I can't just let it go like that, because a lot of people who may be on or who may be hearing this or watching it on Facebook may have no idea what we're all about. And it's easy to give you an idea by reading the preamble of the Constitution of the UNIA-ACL. Yeah. And let me recite it to you. The Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League is a social, friendly, humanitarian, charitable, educational, institutional, constructive, and expansive society, and is founded by persons desiring to the utmost to work for the general uplift of the Negro.
You muted again. Baba Mosi, you muted again.
What is going on? I'm sorry. All right, I'll restart. The Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League is a social, friendly, humanitarian, charitable, educational, institutional, constructive, and expansive society, and is founded by persons desiring to the utmost to work for the general uplift of the Negro peoples of the world. And the members pledge themselves to do all in their power to conserve the rights of their noble race and to respect the rights of all mankind, believing always in the brotherhood of man and the fatherhood of God. The motto of the organization is one God, one aim, one destiny. Therefore, let justice be done to all mankind, realizing that if the strong oppresses the weak, confusion and discontent will ever mark the path of man. But with love, faith, and charity towards all, the reign of peace and plenty will be heralded into the world, and the generations of men shall be called blessed.
Mm.
And that is right out of the preamble, the preamble right out of the Constitution of the UNIA-ACL. So I thank you for being here with us tonight. And we have on as our guest Dr. Marsha Adebayo and Robert Stubblefield. These are, Dr. Marsha is the president of the BACC, the Bethesda African Cemetery Coalition. And Robert Stubblefield is a member of that organization as well. And he is one of the key people. He is a researcher and a political analyst. And so he's going to give you his opinion of some of the things that's going on right now. We have two people here who are well versed in what is happening here in Montgomery County with the Moses Cemetery. And I will turn this over to Dr. Marsha to lead us off on that. Well, I'm sorry, I didn't give you a background of Dr. Marsha. Well, I let her do so. If she's so well known, you know, I keep forgetting that sometimes you have to let people know who this person is. And you know, she's a fearless person, and the federal government knows that very well. They have had a taste of her sting. So, all right, Dr. Marsha.
I like that introduction. Thank you. So first of all, let me thank Baba Mosi and the entire UNIA family for this incredible opportunity to talk tonight. I'm so grateful for your leadership, Baba Mosi, and also Baba Singor, and all the people who've joined with us to help us fight this monster, really, that we call Montgomery County government. It has been 5 years. It's been a 6-year fight now against this beast, and we've had some success, we've had some failures, but we're still here. We're still here. And I also wanted to thank UNIA for your leadership in the Juneteenth program that we just enjoyed. You know, we're so grateful for everybody who came out, the wonderful music, the drummers, the spoken word. It was incredible. Everybody remembers that. So thanks to everybody for that. And also just to say that I'm very honored to be a member of UNIA, just as my grandmother was a member of UNIA, and it's something that I'm just incredibly proud of. I'd also like to extend an invitation to everyone to visit the American University exhibit that we're sponsoring, a Bethesda African Cemetery Coalition. We put a lot of sweat equity in this exhibit. It's called The Bridge That Carried Us Over. And while Robert is speaking, I'll get the book that we've just published. We just published our second book on this topic. We're almost publishing a book a year now on this issue. And we're really proud of the second book published by the American University. And the book has the same title, The Bridge That Carried Us Over. It's the catalog to the museum. And it is, I think it's a very important book for everybody to read. But I wanted to start off my brief talk with the quote from Fannie Lou Hamer, The Bridge That Carried Us Over. And she said, "There are things I feel strong about. One is not to forget where I come from, and the other is to praise the bridge that carried us over." So I'm so proud of UNIA and our March for Truth, where we march because we don't want to be fed lies anymore. And we thank everyone for your commitment to justice and for the gumption to fight for liberation in the face of barbarism. The politicians and those in power have tried to cover up the atrocity and the genocide that occurred on River Road in Bethesda, Maryland for over 70 years. As you know, the folks in Moses Cemetery were considered non-human. That is why today the county can dig up their graves and dump them into landfills where the remains are crushed and steamed in order to destroy all criminal evidence of the genocide that occurred on River Road. We are the guardians of those that cannot fight for themselves. And so you will learn at the museum that half of all African infants born on River Road and throughout the United States died during their first year of life. You will learn at the American University that the death rate for African children remained twice that of white kids through the age of 14, and that a quarter of those trafficked to the South were kidnapped, enslaved African children between the ages of 8 and 15 years old. And that nearly every African girl and woman was the victim of sexual barbarism. And that the lives of these young girls, these kidnapped African girls, that their lives have been written out of history. And that sexual barbarism and reproductive oppression was at the center of the African girls' and women's life experience on River Road and throughout the Americas. And you will also learn at this exhibit that the average lifespan of a kidnapped African, and you will note that I'm not calling our ancestors slaves. I'm not calling them enslaved. I'm calling them kidnapped African nationals. These were kidnapped African nationals. That the average lifespan of a kidnapped African national was 20 years old. So that by the time an African child was 10 years old, they had lived half of their lifespan. So this exhibit is revolutionary. I really want to encourage everyone to get our book, The Bridge That Carried Us Over. And I definitely want you to come to the exhibit and experience what we have put together with our own hands for our community. And one of the things that we can do is that we can have a private showing for UNIA so that people can be expressive and they can feel what they feel as they go through the exhibit. And Brother Baba Mosey, I think you've been to the exhibit, but when you were there were 200 or 300 people in the room. So it was really hard to sort of see everything that people should really experience. But it would be great to have a UNIA private exhibit showing so that people can take their time and sort of in the quiet of a day and really experience this. So the American University exhibit on the River Road, Moses, Macedonia, African Cemetery is a case study which demonstrates that the barbarism of the 17th century continues in the 21st century. The commitment and passion to destroy the African body is as strong today as it was in 1619. Thus, the fight to stop the desecration of Moses is equivalent to our fighting to save our own lives and those of our children in this century. So failure cannot be an option. So the exhibit seeks to connect the significance of Moses Cemetery with the murder of our children at the hands of police, which is essentially a genocide that's occurring in our community right now. So why do I think the county has spent so much time and effort to cover up what happened to the Black folks on River Road? First of all, land in Bethesda right now is very precious. It's very expensive. So right now, the land that we are fighting for is worth approximately $100 million. And I'll repeat that the land that we are fighting for right now on River Road and past River Road is worth about $100 million. And Europeans are not going to turn over that kind of wealth to the Black community. But that is wealth that we own, where our ancestors are buried. And when they were buried in portions of that cemetery, the land was considered worthless. Now you fast forward 150 years, and now the land is worth a significant amount of money. And so the Europeans are not going to just give that up without a major fight. I think the second reason why these people, these Europeans, are so engaged in a cover-up is because Moses Macedonia Cemetery, as you've heard me say, was composed primarily, I argue in the book, of children. This is a cemetery that is composed, I believe, our research proves, it was composed primarily of children. It is a children's cemetery of boys and girls. And I think when we have the proper investigation, it will expose that a majority of these little girls, they bled to death because of the forced pregnancies they were forced to endure. They were forced to start breeding or having violent sexual encounters as early as 5 years old. In fact, these little girls now, if you read the book, they were literally rented out to these pedophiles throughout Maryland and throughout the country. In fact, Harriet Tubman was rented out at 5 years old. And now we found evidence of the Councilman family right on River Road, renting these little girls out as early as 5 years old. If you go to the museum, you will see a white dress called a chemise that these little girls wore without any undergarments at all in the dead of winter. And that is the only shield their little bodies had against the winter. You will see this in the museum. And you will also see the shackles that they were forced to wear. So according to our research that's in the book, 50 to 60% of these little girls bled out in childbirth. In fact, there's a story that I tell in one of the chapters that I write about a 7-year-old girl whose stomach started protruding, and they just assumed she was pregnant. And when she died, upon autopsy, they realized that she had a tumor. But they were raping them as early as 5 and hoping they could become pregnant by 7, because by the time they were 10 years old, they had already lived half of their lifetime. So for them to get 15 to 16 babies out of these little girls, they had to start producing babies at very, very, very early ages. So I think it's one of the reasons why the county has been so intent on making sure the research does not occur on River Road. That's why in 2020, they allowed 40 pickup trucks to go to the cemetery and to dig up as much soil and as many bones, funerary objects as possible. And then what did they do with those objects? They took them to a private landfill, not a public one, a private landfill, so that we couldn't gain access to that. But we did, of course, because we followed the dump trucks to the landfill, and we quickly got our car in before they closed the gate, and we took pictures. You will see those pictures at the museum, and you will see about 30 objects that we pulled out of that landfill before they called the police on us and forced us out of the landfill. And we dug out these artifacts with our bare hands, And the archaeologists that were hired by the developer for 3 months said they didn't find anything in the cemetery. We found 30 objects in 30 minutes. 30 objects in 30 minutes. But the county has refused to acknowledge the lives of our ancestors. But one of the things that we have done at BACC is that we have shut down 3 developers We have run them out of Bethesda. We have run 3 developers out of Bethesda in the last 5 years. And we just stopped a $70 million project from proceeding in Bethesda, where they wanted to put a park on top of our ancestors. And we've done this obviously as a community, UNIA, BACC, we're all together and we're all fighting these blood-sucking companies from disrespecting our ancestors. So I'm going to cut this short because I just want you to know that one of the fights that we are engaged in right now, which will take all of us to win, is that we just found out about some memos and affidavits that were floating around, which proves that they were actually finding bones, our ancestors, in this cemetery. So 2 years ago, Mark Elrich was talking, who's the county executive of Montgomery County, was talking to preeminent bioarchaeologist, Dr. Michael Blakey. And Mark called him 2 years ago. Now you have to understand, Mark has been going all over Montgomery County saying there's nothing in that cemetery. We haven't found anything. BACC is delusional. The Black people of Macedonia just want to believe that their ancestors are there. But behind closed doors, he's calling Dr. Blakey saying, we found human remains in the cemetery. We think we found some bones. What should we do about it? And Dr. Blakey was real clear. He said, my advice to you is stop desecrating this area. Stop all construction. Meet with the community and let me examine whatever you found. Well, what did the county do? The county decided when Dr. Blakey called to say, where are the remains from my examination? They said, oh, we lost them. We can't find the remains anymore. We don't know what happened to them. They're just gone. So that tells you that we are in a cover-up situation now. These people knew they had human remains. They decided to lose them, to disappear those bones. But what we've done lately, and I'm going to turn it over to Robert next, is that we have put together now a timeline. And now our lawyers are involved, and we intend to take these people to court, and we intend to make sure that criminal charges are brought against the county executive of Montgomery County, against the state's attorney, and everybody who is involved in this cover-up. We found out that on July 17th, 18, Mark Elrich, county executive here, running for office again, called Dr. Blakey to inform him that bones had been found in Moses. Blakey requests to examine the remains. July 19th, I write to Rabbi Hertzfeld telling him that somehow the bones have now found their way to a forensic lab somewhere. Rabbi Hertzfeld says this stinks. He doesn't believe that this is that these were animal bones, that he believes that these were human bones. Around July 20th, the state's attorney decides to visit Moses to see what he can see. But what he does is he's warning the developer, look, these people may come after you and tell you that they've got human bones, and you've got to figure out what your story is. Later that day, Mark Elrich calls Dr. Blakey and tells him that the bones have now disappeared. They are all connected to this story, and they're all engaged in a cover-up. And we are going to blow the cover off of this cover-up. So I will end my remarks there and just ask you to continue to support us. We're so grateful for UNIA's leadership of BACC, and this fight is not over. We're going to win, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Marsha. And of course, you tried to shorten this, but we've got a lot of time here tonight, and you don't have to shorten anything. There's a lot to be said about what is happening in BACC and at Moses Cemetery. There's a great history of struggle to regain that place, and we need to allow people to know who some of these people are, and what they're doing. Because it's been 6 years, right? It's been a 6-year struggle. you fought developers of all sorts, and you have a county, I guess, a county HOC. That what can you call that? It's a Housing Opportunity
Housing
Commission, a
Opportunities
county
Commission.
commission
Mhm.
that's in charge of all this, and they have not been doing us right. As a matter of fact, they might be worse than most people,
Mhm.
and some of the people that are on it are people
Right.
you would not expect to be acting in that way. But
Mhm.
again, some of the current events and some of the of what you're doing in the struggle, I'm saying you, but I mean BACC in general. If we can hear some of that from Robert, is that true?
Mhm.
Robert, let
Yeah,
let
I'm
me.
here. I can hear you. Yeah. So
Okay.
I'm going to, first let me just say thank you, Marsha, for your remarks and your leadership. I also want to say thank you to the UNIA for your support and your partnership and I want to say your, being a willing accomplice in the fight for justice. I don't like the term ally because the term ally implies that you can leave at any time. When one wants to be an accomplice, it means they're willing to stick by you. It reminds me of a full quote that people take out of context where it goes, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water in the womb.
Mm.
And that is powerful.
Mm.
And blood is a very powerful thing.
Mm.
In our culture, in our African culture, blood is considered sacred.
Mm.
The blood of the ancestors is considered especially sacred.
Mhm.
So sacred, in fact, that in some African cultures like the Yoruba, you do not even point into the direction of their final resting place.
Mhm.
A term that's been thrown out over the years has been the Mafa, or the Great Destruction. Another term that I think is pretty appropriate because it is still going on affecting the River Road community and their descendants is the Manamizi. The Manamizi is Kiswahili for the Great Suffering.
Mm.
And that is exactly what we are still seeing to this very day. When you're talking about the desecration and the games that this county is playing. One of the things, and Marsha can vouch for me, is that originally when we got Michael Blakey involved, we got him involved first around 2017, 2018, after the Audrey Group report. And this was a historical consulting group located here in Montgomery County that the county itself hired to do a hit job on BACC.
Mm-hmm.
But when the Audrey Group came back and told the county, not only is parcels 175 and 177 a cemetery, they said you need to delineate and do an archaeological study on the entire area, including parcels 242, as Marsha talked about, because as the Audrey Group found out, that entire area was known as a community burial property.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a community burial property going back to the 1800s. And why was it a community burial property? This ties back to the history. Whenever an African, a kidnapped African national died, whether due to being bled out or being overworked, they would be dumped into that area because that area was nothing but swampland. They didn't know how to grow anything. But at night, what the communities surrounding that area would do is that they would come and actually give those bodies a proper burial. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we uncovered are glass bottles.
Yes. Glass
bottles bear a significance throughout the South of African and African-American burial sounds because, and this is some circumstantial evidence at best, but it implies that there was a mix of African burial rituals. Mm-hmm. Some call it hoodoo, others call it voodoo, but those glass bottles bear significance to that. Mm-hmm. What the county did when they uncovered this back in the summer of 2020 was that they took some of those bottles and took them home with them. They didn't test them. Mm-hmm. And some bones, they classified those as animal bones, and they said they sent them to Towson University to be examined. But the problem is that when we asked for those reports, because mind you, this said, we have reports proving these are animal bones. So we did two things. One, we wanted to see a copy of that report. Two, Dr. Blakey himself also said, I need to know what methods you use so I could replicate that to see if I achieved the same result or if I got a different result. And our response was, well, we don't have those reports available. Think about that for a second. You spent all this time saying we have reports, but whenever somebody, in addition to BACC, you even have some concerned citizens who don't even align with us.
Mhm.
But when they ask, well, can we see the reports? And you tell them, well, we don't have those reports. That tells us you didn't have reports in the first place. If anything, that tells us that deep down you knew, assuming you did send those off, you knew that those were human bones.
Mhm.
And instead of saying, hey, we messed up, we need to stop construction, we need to have a meeting with the community, you just go, no, we're going to continue the construction. We're not going to hand over anything. That is criminal in the following ways.
Mhm.
It's criminal because you're holding bones, the bones of the ancestors, bones that were illegally dug up, and you're holding them hostage. And even though we are demanding, because that is our biological connection. To quote President Julius Nyerere of Tanzania, if you come into my house and steal my jacket, don't then ask if I'm ready for my jacket. The jacket was mine. You had no right to take it from me in the first place. It is the same thing with those bones. Those bones were buried there with dignity. Those bones were reminiscent of community that once lived there. Because keep in mind, let's talk about post-1865. We're talking immediately after the Civil War. People who left enslavement, who left the Mafa with less than nothing, by the beginning of the 20th century, were able to turn this quote unquote swampland into a thriving farmland. They built up community. I mean, a woman, Charlotte Gray, bought 6 acres of land, which established Graysville. Let's think about that. Queen Mother Charlotte Gray, now an ancestor, bought 6 acres of land and established a community, established the Independent Methodist Episcopal Church, as well as helped establish a baseball team.
Mhm.
That shows the resiliency. Yes, there is trauma, and we got to talk about that trauma. But we got to talk about the resiliency that our people showed immediately following the Civil War.
Mhm.
Another person, William Henry Harrison Brown, who fought in the Civil War with the U.S. Colored Infantry, which was attached to the Army of the Potomac, answered Frederick Douglass's call for Negro men to take up the arm and put the brass eagle across your breast. He answered that call. He fought for the Union. He fought to save democracy. He believed in democracy. And how does he get rewarded? His grave gets dug up. As Paul Curry just mentioned at our Juneteenth celebration, this country and this county is very hypocritical. We always say thank you to veterans, and I don't know if anyone here is a veteran of the military, but we always say thank you for your service, thank you for your service when we want to get elected. We always say thank you for your service when we want to look good for the cameras, but as soon as the cameras go away, or as soon as the election is over, all of a sudden we leave you alone to be destitute and die. Where is William H. Brown's thank you? His grave gets dug up and his bones are moved around, him and his first wife. But we also got to talk about the church. Macedonia Baptist Church's history and the role that it plays in this struggle. The site where Macedonia Baptist Church stands used to be the slave quarters for both the councilmen, the Loughborough, the Posey death camps. Yes, there is terror, but you also saw the beginnings of what we like to call Black liberation theology. We see the beginnings of what Kelly Brown Douglas calls the slave Christianity, a slave breaking Christianity, which tells you that the fight for justice and that God himself is a just God. And where Macedonia now stands, that spirit is still here. Because we have to remember, BACC grew out of the social justice ministry of Macedonia Baptist Church. In fact, as Montgomery County recognized in 2019, that the Macedonian Baptist Church is the sole surviving cultural institution of the once thriving River Road African American community. The mistake that they made when they did displacement and desecration, and we have to remember that displacement and desecration comes in waves. But in each wave, their mistake was they left the church alone. And the church in our community is a gathering place. It is a beck and call. A lot of activists, organizers, got their start in the Black church. And that is why when we get Moses back, and we will get Moses Macedonia Cemetery destroyed today, but it will be restored tomorrow. We must also make sure that Macedonia Baptist Church is protected.
Yes.
And the reason why we must make sure that church is protected, because they realize we made the mistake of leaving that church alone once. We cannot let that happen again. So we need to make sure that, that Macedonia Baptist Church and Moses Macedonia Cemetery have protections that are needed, so that way when Baba Segun and Queen Mother Marsha are in the ancestral plane, they cannot destroy it. And to go back to the church a little bit, I remember a few years ago, and I was reading the comments in the Bethesda Beat magazine. And the comment section, I call that Stormfront Moco. And I call it Stormfront because it was reminiscent of an old white supremacist chat log from back in the early 2000s. And someone had the audacity to say Macedonia Baptist Church was an eyesore. And I looked around and said, you see an apartment complex that's right next to the church. You have a warehouse facility. You have all these shops around this that look decrepit. And yet you have the audacity, the gall, to say that the church, which to me is the only cleanest looking institution around that area, you have the audacity to call that church an eyesore. When we won our court case back in October, and it was a historic landmark case because it established Macedonia Baptist Church as a cultural institution, as a cultural ancestor. It also established BACC as cultural descendants. The same people who called Macedonia Baptist Church an eyesore were dead silent. And I wonder why they were dead silent. And it's remarks like these that reminds me of a scripture that my grandmother used to quote me whenever I was feeling down and out, which says that I've already made your enemies your footstool, and that no weapon formed against you shall prosper. In other words, and if you want proof of ancestral intervention, go to parcel 242. You will see that there is water there. Let me repeat that. That is water. And water, not only is it sacred, but water is also a protecting source. And no matter how many times they pump that water out, that water keeps coming back. And that water is there, that means they can't put down concrete. They can't lay down any foundation. They literally cannot do anything. That to me is a sign that the ancestors are fighting back. That to me is a sign that at this point, sooner or later, the developer is going to have to be like, you know what, this land ain't worth it. This is a piece of crap land. As far as I'm concerned, the church can have it. I'm done with it. When that happens, not only are we going to celebrate, we're going to celebrate in a way that honors the ancestors and brings forward a bright future. But we are also going to deliver this as a reprimand and a warning to our enemies. And our enemies aren't just people who are actively against us. Our enemies are those that can sit in the face of evil and chose to be neutral. When we all know neutrality has never helped the oppressed, it has always helped the oppressor. We're going to send them this message. The message is, if you're not going to be part of that struggle, don't you dare be part of our success. when we have our celebration, don't you dare come along acting like, oh, I supported you this whole time. Because I don't know about Marsha, but I myself, and I hope that the UNA will ask, well, did you march with them?
Yes.
Did you write testimony on their behalf? Did you call out Mark Elrich when he was doing wrong? Did you count the county council? Did you count the planning board? Did you count the developer? If you did none of those things, we want you out. And the only option I want the UNIA to tell those folks, you said give them this option, you have to walk out of here willingly, or you can be carried out. You know. But what we are fighting against, and as Marsha touched on, but I want to expand on it, we are fighting against white supremacy and the bestiality of racial capitalism. It is a bestiality that seeks to derive its wealth, its economic value from the trauma of those that they deem less than. It is an ugly bestiality that ultimately will seek to devour itself. Because we have to remember Bethesda, where this is located, Bethesda is sitting on $30 billion of home equity. To put this in context, that is more than Greenwich Village in New York. How does that happen? It happens when you redline certain areas of the county and you overly resource places like Bethesda, when you overly resource places like Potomac, and you leave other parts of the county and other historic African-American communities. And you say you're on your own. Because we have seen in our research, River Road, Tobytown, Scotland, Kengar, Littonsville, Farm Road, Jerusalem Road, Sugarland, Pleasant View, all these historically African-American communities. Oh, and Lincoln Park in Rockville, which was the birthplace of Father Divine, who was considered the link between Dr. Marcus Garvey and Dr. Martin Luther King. All these historically African communities are at risk and at danger of displacement and desecration. So and as we haven't covered, there's been ties between River Road and these communities. So we have to remember that, you know, those of us that are, you know, the kidnapped African nationals and their descendants, that we are the only one that has dared say enough is enough. We're the only ones saying you're not pushing us around anymore. And we are the only ones that are demanding that the land be returned, because we know that land is power, land is justice, and land is freedom. And they're scared that if we get that land back, it will set a quote unquote dangerous precedent. Let me ask, what is dangerous about getting back what was stolen from you? Other places throughout this country have already returned land back to Black communities that were harmed. It happened in Tampa when they discovered that they were building an apartment complex on top of a historically African-American cemetery. They turned that land back to the Black church. It happened in Georgia with the Harmony Hope Foundation. They saved Allen Chapel AME Church Cemetery. That land got returned back to them. It happened in California late last year when Bruce's Beach was returned. All these places are showing that you know, land needs to be returned to these communities. And yet you need to tell me Montgomery County, considered the wealthiest county in the wealthiest state, cannot return land, doesn't want to return land. That is insulting to anyone with intelligence. It is insulting to anyone with common sense. And so here we are, 2022, 6 years later, after, 6 years later into this fight. And now we have a more criminal cause. Because who loses bone? That should be a question to anybody. Who loses bones? The real question is that we should be asking, did you lose them or did you hide and destroy those bones? This wouldn't be the first time Europeans have destroyed bones. Think about what the Belgians did to our brother and comrade Patrice Lumumba. And it's only until like a couple of weeks ago they returned his tooth to his family. his gold tooth at that. This is not the first time they will have destroyed bones for the sake of their God, which is profit and greed. Whereas our God, whether you call him Yahweh or Allah or Olodumare, is a God of liberation and justice. And history has shown that when the God of greed and profit goes up against the God of liberation and justice, God of liberation and justice always prevails. And with that, I yield the remainder of my time. And, I'm ready to take any questions or comments that anyone here may have. Thank you.
Very well done, Robert. You understand why I keep talking to you about certain things, but we can talk about that later. There's a sense of where we can go from here. But let me say, the young people that you work with, some people may not understand, but we have a lot of young people in BACC working, and they're really dedicated, and it's for me, it's inspiring to see that happen, and I'm wishing that we can get more people involved. What do you think that we're not doing? In other words, I'm saying, what do you think that BACC is not doing, or is finding it hard to do to reach out to a lot of our young people? I know they've got them out there, but we need more. I think and why I'm saying that is because we've seen what young people have done for Black Lives Matter and other things, and the sensitivity to what the crime of desecration of African cemeteries is somehow not registering with young people, a lot of young people, and I'm wondering what could be the matter. What is really that stimulus that brings young people into working for a cause?
Well, if I may answer that question, if I may start off. So I think part of the problem is, and this has just been my observation, a lot of young people are looking at protests and rallies as the movement. It's a key part of it, but it's not the only thing. In other words, they look at a moment, not a movement. The thing with this protests and rallies are just one part of it. And I think some of them, I'm speaking as a young man myself, although at 30 is one still considered a youth, but I digress. I know I dated myself, but one of the things is that we gotta understand is that one is that there's so much work has to be done. Protests and rallies are just part of it. There's research that has to be done. There's a lot of writing that has to be done, getting this word out on social media, as well as the researching and developing policy. The second thing I've noticed, I think people don't see the connection between police terrorism and the desecration of African burial sites. They go hand in hand. And one of the things I will say that we have done, to our credit, is that one of our battle cries is Black Lives Matter in life and in death, from the womb to the tomb. Because we draw that connection from the fact that ever since a Black person is born, their body is considered a target. And even in death, when you would think, here is a grave, you should be able to rest in peace, get the dignity you got, given dignity in death that you weren't given in life, that doesn't even happen for you. So that's one thing that I think that we have done pretty good. Of course, that, I'm greedy. I do want more people. But the other thing too, we also got the third thing we got to consider is timing. And I say the timing is because there's some people, it's like they want to get involved, but either they're moving out of state for school or they're dealing with family issues at the moment. So what we've done, try to be accommodating, is that, if I can give an example, we had a new member orientation back in May, and it was all virtual, which made it easier for people who wanted to be involved in the fight to come and learn what this fight is about, the history of the area, the history of the people who settled River Road, and of course, like how they can get involved. So that's a key thing. So those are just a couple of things, my observation as to why it's hard to get more young people involved. Although I will say our numbers are starting to grow, albeit, slowly but surely, they're coming. And that's because, since we're getting new members and they got connections with other groups, they're informing the groups they're a part of, like, hey, you really need to be part of this fight. Because to me, even though social media is great, to me, the best form of getting the word out there is word of mouth,
Yeah,
Well,
and if I can also,
okay, sorry. Go ahead, Marsh.
oh, yeah, if I can also chime in on this. I mean, one of the consequences of displacement is that you move a community out of an area, and then after you move the community out, and then you desecrate the grave. I mean, if we still had a Black community around the cemetery, we'd have a lot more Black people involved. Right now, it's an all-white community, and Robert is right. I mean, people look at Macedonia and go, what is that Black church doing sitting up on that hill? When they don't realize that the whole community was Black. And so, what we've done at Macedonia Baptist Church, which you don't see necessarily, is our kids, when doing Sunday school, before COVID, they were making signs for the demonstrations, because a lot of them live out in PG County. They don't have transportation to get over to Bethesda for demonstrations, but they would make some of the signs. They were helping us come up with slogans during Sunday school. I mean, so we really got our kids involved, but that's on Sunday. And then, of course, on Monday, they're back, in PG County or wherever they're at. And it's hard to come in from PG County to Bethesda and then get back and do homework. And but I also wanted to say that Robert is such a great model, symbol of the leadership, the young leadership of BACC. And we have intentionally, I think, those of us who are not young anymore, sort of, step back and allow our young folks to really take over the leadership of BACC. And you can see the kind of dynamic and brilliant leadership that's coming out of BACC. And like I'm like in awe of Robert and the other leaders of BACC, because I mean, the ideas that they come up with are just things that I couldn't have even thought of. And that's a problem for a lot of Black organizations that are not willing to relinquish leadership to the next generation. But at BACC, that's our operation, that's our operational guidelines, is that our leadership is youth focused. And basically, we sort of, the older folks, we're actors, we're there to guide and to participate, but we want our young folks to be out front.
Yeah, and if I may,
I prompted the question because, it's not just BACC, it's quite a few, like you said, quite a few other organizations. Go ahead, Robert, I'm sorry.
Sure, no problem. So if I can give an example of some of the youth leadership, I want to mention their names. I know they're not here. Ari Gutman, Mia Carmel, and Adam Simon. And the reason why I mentioned them is because they literally went to high school a stone's throw away from River Road.
Mm-hmm.
They went to Walt Whitman High School. They said all their time growing up in Montgomery County, they were not aware that there was a Black community that lived around the corner, let alone that there was a Black cemetery. And as Mia mentioned this at our new member orientation, it's because the county wanted people to forget about River Road. It's like they wanted people to forget about Moses, Macedonia.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we have to do, and one of the things that I appreciate about to sound old myself, thank you, Marsha, about the youth, about some of the new youth in the movement, is that they're willing to learn about like the history of the places where they live.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is very powerful, because it's like for some people, it's like, holy crap. Like, one of them found holy crap. I didn't know that, where I live in Chevy Chase used to be a historically Black area called Belmont Park, And that was a place for, like, you know, the African servants of Europeans who lived in Chevy Chase, you know, to live. But when they developed Belmont Park, Chevy Chase annexed it to be part of Chevy Chase and said, okay, unless you work for the people that live here, they made that a sundown town. They made that part of a sundown town. And that's part of the thing that, like, a lot of youth now won't start to do the research of the people of the people that of the communities where we live. In fact, in Somerset, when you're driving along Wisconsin Avenue, you can actually find like this park. They actually have a plaque that says, "Oh, this is where enslaved Africans were to be sold down to the South." You know, some of them didn't know that until they became part of the coalition and started doing this research about the Mafa, the Manamizi, and they were like, "Oh my goodness," you know, it's like well, Sarah, they didn't want them to know. And so it's like having this leadership focus in research, not just about cemeteries, but including the schools, like the what was community life like. That to me is very, very pivotal, so we can push back on the narratives of a lot of things. I think I saw Baba Senghor raise his hand.
Yeah, Baba Mosi, I just want to say real quickly, thank you, Marsha, and thank you, my brother Robert. You all have laid out quite a bit. This issue is a very serious issue to many of us that have been in the movement for a long time. Our ancestors are actually waiting and watching and crying and dying still spiritually because of the lack of knowledge of the people who are still above dirt. And we have to accept that reality. I mean, the UNIA, for an example, we had millions of supporters and members in the 1920s, and here it is 2020, and it's hard to get people to even respect the UNIA. But you all said it right. It's not just the cemetery, it's period. And our young brothers and sisters don't have the kind of experience and background and oppression all on their backs that we have. They have a different type of oppression, and it's our responsibility to educate them in what we're doing now. So I'm not going to be long, but I just wanted to be strong with the reality. The UNIA is working to rehabilitate our movement worldwide. And one of the first stops is to respect our ancestors, because they who passed that on to us. And in any movement that refuses to respect their ancestors loses self-respect and knowledge of self.
Exactly.
And so we have to, and I'm adding to what was said, but it's critical that we recognize where we are as a people globally. We're not a minority people, but we get stepped on all kinds of ways, where it's health, education, social, everything, only because we don't know how powerful we once were. And once we provide that, Baba Mosi, and I know you understand it clearly, my father was born in Rockville. And so, you know, my mother was born in DC, my father in Rockville. A lot of people don't know the DMV is so interconnected, and they don't know the history that has taken place where Blacks have been removed from one place to the other. At one point, Blacks didn't even go into certain areas in Montgomery County unless it was a Black neighborhood in Montgomery County. And I know because I was one of those young people. So I'm saying the work that we're doing is so critical to all movement work to smash out the oppression of white supremacy. So I applaud the coalition for what we have been doing, because it is tied to the oppression that we face every day when we get up ourselves. And so, you know, once you know yourself, and you're tired of that oppression, you fight against it. And every show that we've done on Carl Nelson, we've got somebody who said, I didn't know about that. And in some cases, some of them have relatives who were in that area. So we have to educate, and we have to continue to reach our young brothers and sisters, because they lack some things, but we lack a lot of what they have. So together, we make a real movement. And I had to say that because even with my grandchildren, I'm educating them on what's going on in Montgomery County. They never knew Black people even lived out there unless we pass that on to them. So I just wanted to share that, because I'm one, and I think Marsha is too, I'm one of those Africans born in DC who actually found myself because of elders and our ancestors. That's what Senghor means. But it's not about me, he or she, it's about we. And if we don't collectively come together and fight back this, then what else? So anyway, I want to applaud y'all, and I want to close on this point, Baba Mosi. The UNIA is totally in support of what the Woodson Banneker Jackson Bay Division is doing. So wherever we go, whatever we do, we make sure that we let other brothers and sisters know that this struggle in Banneker City suburbs, because that's how I like to call it, because we're still here, is a critical struggle that needs to be broadcast everywhere. So anyway, thank you all for you all's messages, because it's motivating. And you see, I'm fired up. We got to raise our Blacktricity and wipe out white supremacy, period.
Exactly. And I want to just, the respect for the ancestors is very key, because there was an African proverb I remember I was reading about it a couple of years ago, and it's very pivotal. It goes, those who reject their ancestors will be rejected by their offspring. And so that is very, very key. We have to remember like the stories, that are passed down, not just with BACC, but, like with every historically black organization, the UNIA, as you touched on the head, there was millions, they had like strong support, even the Deep South. In fact, Rosa Parks's grandfather was a proud member of the UNIA. In fact, he was so proud, he actually carried a pistol around, and no one messed with his family, because everyone knew that if you hurt his family, he was coming after you. And even in Cuba, Garvey had strong supporters in Cuba and Liberia. And so it's like passing that knowledge on. And, one of the things that I think is very key is like coalescing with a lot of younger Black organizations. Because as you mentioned, Baba Senghor, it's not just an I, me, he or she, it's a we thing. Because there's things I'm going to say that, yeah, there's things I'm good at, but I don't know everything. But, people like you, Baba Mosi, Marsha, who've been in this movement a lot longer than I have, you can be more about the pitfalls and how to avoid certain temptations and traps. And that way that comes together. So it's kind of like, hey, we can definitely move forward and be more proactive and see the traps coming before they hit us. That I think is very key, that building there.
Yeah, I also, if I could just tag on to Robert, I wanted to thank Baba Senghor, because we've been on Carl Nelson's show, and he's got such a huge audience. I mean, we've been able to reach a lot of people now. In fact, with this information, in fact, one of the descendants that's on the lawsuit heard about our lawsuit through the Carl Nelson show. And so the Carl Nelson show has been, even I have a radio show on WPFW, but the Carl Nelson show is so much more powerful, reaches so many more people than WPFW. So I can't tell you just how grateful we are to you that you're able to get us that kind of exposure. I did want to say one thing, and that is that our ancestors are not passive. I mean, I feel, and I think Robert feels this way too, and Baba Mosi, is that when we tap into our ancestors, we're tapping into a power line. I mean, not only do we learn something about resilience, we talked about Charlotte Gray, this African woman who endured European barbarism that they like to call slavery, but it was just simply barbarism on steroids. Not only did she survive European barbarism, but then after European barbarism, this woman bought 6 acres of land in Bethesda. I mean, how many of us own 6 acres of land? Here's a woman who still had scars on her back, and she's buying land, so much land that they renamed the portion that we call Moses Cemetery area Graysville. I mean, she was an incredible Black woman. Our children have a right to know about people like Charlotte Gray. They have a right to know about her. They have a right to know about Frances Gray. They have a right to know about all these dynamic Black people. Our kids walk around thinking that everybody else has done so much, have achieved so much, and we've done so little, when people in their own backyards have literally walked on water and they don't even have knowledge of it. It's ridiculous. And then I must tell you, there are times when I get, down, depressed, and I think, oh my God, this struggle is so huge. We're fighting all these very powerful people, these multi-million-dollar corporations, all these, you know, crazy Europeans. And I say, like, you know, are we able to really pull this off? And then, you know, one time I was at the cemetery and I was telling, someone was saying to me, why don't you come and see, look over into the cemetery? Because as African people, we have to look over the cemetery at the gate of a McDonald's. We don't have they haven't given us the humanity or the dignity to be able to go into the cemetery and pour libation to our ancestors. We have to literally stand at the gate of a McDonald's in a parking lot to look over the gate to see our ancestors where they're being dug up. I mean, this is an apartheid that even whatever. And one time someone said to me, I want you to come over and look at it. And I said, no, I can't do it anymore because it makes me sad and I feel depressed and I just can't do it today. And they said, no, Marsha, you've got to come over. You've got to look and see what's going on over here. So I said, okay, I go over there and the place looks like a swimming pool. There is so much water in the Moses Cemetery. And all I could think about was, well, maybe my knees are buckling, but our ancestors, they're still fighting. They keep coming in with these huge water trucks and they keep sucking the water out the cemetery. And we go back 2 days later and the cemetery is full of water. And these people cannot understand, how is it that this water just miraculously appears in this cemetery? We just sucked it out and now it's back again. And they're spending millions of dollars to try to get the water out the cemetery. They just took another loan for $47 million on the cemetery. And our ancestors just keep filling the water up. So our ancestors are not passive. They are fighting. And I think one of the success that we have at BACC is that we've tapped into our ancestors. And that's where a lot of our courage comes from when people say, well, how do you guys stop Mack trucks? How do you stand in front of Mack trucks? It's because our ancestors are holding us up on both sides. We're not crazy, but we have tapped into a power source. So it's not just us standing out there, our ancestors are surrounding us. And we really believe that there's power there. And when you do not acknowledge our ancestors, you're forfeiting a whole lot of power. We can't afford that. So we've got to tap into that resource.
Yep. And if I can, just dive in a little bit more so into the spiritual plane, is that because these were African nationals that were kidnapped, one of the things, especially amongst from Nigeria, right? In the Orisha cosmology, you have Yemaya. Yemaya is not only the spirit of water, but she's also considered the protector of children. In this space where children were killed, bled out, treated as if they were broodmares. Here you have Yemaya, and especially you have to remember this was swampland too. So you see Yemaya is using, along with the ancestors, essentially using that water to combat this. Saying, you have this, it's pretty much her and the ancestors saying, you have disturbed our children's resting place for the last time. I'm going to make sure it does not happen anymore. So that's what I think is happening, as in addition to the ancestors fighting back, this is like the spiritual, it's a spiritual realm too, like within the African cosmology. I see the President General has his hand raised, so I'm gonna,
Sante Sana, I appreciate and respect all that I've heard, as well as that what I did not hear. Here in the city of Philadelphia, we too have a grave site of our ancestors that has been deeply disrespected. What was built on that grave site that belonged to the first Black church of the first Black AME church was a playground, tennis court, basketball court. And so we have launched that fight here. And what we've also done is garnish the history of those who are buried there, so that when we did a ceremony to highlight our ancestors, we could call their names. You see, our fight is our truth. And raising the truth scares those who oppose it. Raising our humanity to a point of being a power source scares that humanity which is weak. And we are doing that. I salute all of you in your efforts, as I salute the efforts here in the city of Philadelphia and everywhere where we are. But the reality is, it is a struggle to raise our people to a level of understanding their worth, their commitment, and their contribution. It is what we have not done completely. It's what the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey and the men and women of that era put in play. We are in play, African people, to continue the struggle and to continue the teachings. Because in those teachings, there will be no fear. There will be no weakness. There will only be strength. Each of you exemplify the strength. Asante Sana.
Powerful. And I just wanted to add, with the struggle for African burial grounds, it reminds me a lot of the late Queen Mother Harriet Hines, who founded African Graves Matter and was part of the Flatbush Burial Grounds Coalition. And I had the honor to interview her for an article called Tell the Truth and Shame the Devil Part 2. And she said, the issue of African burial grounds isn't just a Brooklyn issue. It's not just a Montgomery County issue. It's a national issue. And it's a national issue because every day they are finding African burial grounds that have been left in disrepair and have been desecrated. And so what we have to do, in addition to honoring our ancestors, we must demand that these sacred spaces be treated as such. And one of the things that we found when we hosted the Descendants Conference back in October is we had people calling in, not just throughout the United States, but from the Caribbean, Latin America, even the motherland were calling in, because they themselves are dealing with same issues. And so what we have to understand, especially Honorable President General, when you brought up the fact that this was a cemetery established by Richard Allen, the father of the AME movement, and the fact that this city of Philadelphia, a name that means supposed to mean city of brotherly love, and yet here it is, Black people cannot find that love. It is the same thing here in Bethesda, a name that's supposed to mean house of mercy and grace. And here is the Black community in River Road couldn't find neither mercy nor grace. And so we have to have this courage. We have to have the audacity to win, because failure is not an option anymore.
Ashe. Not only is failure not an option, it's the audacity to win. This is the audacity to fight, because if you fight, you will win.
Yes.
See, if you fight, you're going to win. What we have to do is mobilize our communities to understand how we can impact the dichotomy that we exist in. We can change this reality. It's not about changing what happens day to day. It's about changing what happened yesterday, because yesterday created today. It's the way history goes. Stuff don't happen without a foundation. We don't have murders in our community without a foundation. That foundation is that we were murdered. We were treated less than, we were valued less. And that is carried on by the disrespect to our remains of our ancestors. We have to raise up the memories of our ancestors and then protect the land in which they are buried. Because when we do that, we raise them to a new level. We can then begin to raise the consciousness of our people to a new level. The Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey and the men and women that work with him was raising our consciousness to a new level.
Mhm.
It is our responsibility to not only honor the ancestors in grave sites, but to use that honoring and those grave site as a means of thrusting our people to a point where they recognize our value.
Mhm.
Because we have no value if those who went before us, we do not value.
Mhm.
We must value them.
Ashe, Ashe. You know, one of the things that I wanted to say is that, you know, the way our history is always being mangled. And, you know, I went someplace and they had this big statue of Abraham Lincoln. This was a Black museum. And I said to the director, do you realize that, you know, Black people didn't have a lot of respect for Abraham Lincoln? I mean, you know, at the end of the Civil War, you know, Abraham Lincoln kept trying to get a photo op with Harriet Tubman because people were going around calling Abraham Lincoln the great emancipator. But he knew that he needed to have a picture with Harriet Tubman to really make that really work in a sense, right? And so he wrote to Harriet Tubman asking her to come to Washington, D.C. and meet with him. And Harriet Tubman declined. She was very polite, but she declined his offer. And she later told someone, Abraham Lincoln didn't free us. We freed ourselves, right? And so we've got to get our history straight because, you know, because you got Black people going around saying Abraham Lincoln did this and that. My sense is that one of the reasons why desecration is so important to these Europeans is because they are still at war with our ancestors who kicked their backsides. They are still fighting these warriors. I mean, we need to start calling our ancestors what they were. They were warriors. That's the reason why those Europeans were sleeping with knives and everything under their pillows, because they knew that given any opportunity whatsoever, we were going to take them out because we were warriors.
I shame my sister Queen.
And so these people are still fighting, even dead people, because those people under the ground were so incredible. They were fighting. And so these Europeans are fighting, are taking over our cemeteries, first of all, because they can, and because we're not putting up the kind of resistance we need to put up. We need to be putting our bodies on the ground. When they do that, at BACC, we fight. We fight. We put our bodies where our mouths are. We fight these people. And that's one of the reasons why, at least in Montgomery County, I think we have a measure of respect. They may not like us. We don't care about that. But I think they respect us because we're willing to fight. And we need to get more Black people who understand their history, because that is what makes you strong, is when you understand what your ancestors have achieved. And you realize if they can do it, I can do it too.
Ashe.
Yeah.
If I may, and
Go ahead, PG.
thank you, sir. My sister Queen, you are an inspiration, because the battle with our ancestors, it rages on because they fear us gathering that momentum and strength. Harriet Tubman, in refusing to picture with Abraham Lincoln, only mirrored the speech that Frederick Douglass gave. And if people really truly recognize what Lincoln's position was,
Yeah.
they would understand that he was not emancipating us, but trying to ship us all back to Africa, because they then believed in a white America as they do today.
Exactly.
We have to use our history, as you have so eloquently pointed out, to strengthen our movement and to raise our ancestors to the level of their commitment.
Mm-hmm.
If the Caucasian feared them in life,
Mm-hmm.
they triple fear them in death, because they understand the strength of the spirit.
Mm-hmm.
What we have to garnish and gain is that understanding of the strength. We in the UNIA-ACL RC2020, followers of the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, understand the strength of our ancestors, and therefore the fight of our ancestors. And we choose to raise it to a level that most organizations don't want to raise it. I don't fear the Caucasian.
Mhm.
I fear my African ancestors if I fail.
Hey, Ashe,
That's my fear.
Ashe, Ashe.
Okay. And if I could add on to Marsha, by adding to your point, you know, Vincent Brown, the African American historian, you know, said that a lot of the slave rebellions that took place in the U.S. in the Caribbean, Latin America, were in many ways continuations of the wars that got started here, that got started in Africa.
Mhm.
In fact, when you look at Montgomery County, there was a rebellion that took place in Rockville in 1845 called Wheeler's Rebellion. And mind you, this band of 70 African nationals were able to hold their own against militias that not only coming throughout Maryland, but even coming from Virginia for 3 days.
Mhm.
And to prove how bad William Wheeler was, they captured him. They didn't kill him, but they imprisoned him. But 3 months later, he escapes from jail.
Mhm.
And to fear the African spirit, you know, to go to the President General's point, it reminds me a lot of what happened with Nat Turner. Before Nat Turner was killed, he said it would rain for a period of 2 weeks and then there'd be a long hot spell. Sure enough, he was killed and dismembered. And as soon as he was killed, it rained for 2 weeks, just like he said it would. And then for 5 months, from the summer all the way into the fall, it was so hot in that part of Virginia, he had a lot of people die off. In fact, a lot of the African nationals that were alive at the time called that dry spell Nat's Revenge.
Mhm.
So it's that fear of that spirit
Mhm.
that the President General talks about in terms of the fact that's why like there's a lot of fear going on in Montgomery County politics, especially as Mark Elrich knows that Moses is a sore spot for him.
Mhm.
He knows that he's going to be hounded by Moses Macedonian no matter where he goes.
Mhm.
Because at this point, especially now, with the bones, with that Michael Blakey talked about, reminds me of Ezekiel, you know, who said in the valley of the bones, can these bones live?
Mhm.
And the thing with bones, yes, they can. With archaeology and anthropology, the bones speak.
Mhm.
I see the technical support has his hand up.
Yes, we talk about history, just the word history.
Mhm,
History is an anagram of histograms,
mhm,
histograms and stories. And stories is the mapping of events, objects, and occurrences, the mathematical mapping over time or space. So when you think about history or the subjugation of not telling history, because they said that culture is spiritual and it's tied to the land. So when people read the history, they create in the prefrontal cortex, but with the blood and the biochemistry of the body, it opens up the ancestral memories in the blood and the bones.
Mhm.
So what happens is that if you purposely keep history from not being told, you actually set up an energy grid, which actually decreases the linkages to the ancestor. So it's a psychic warfare. And I was not also talked about even in the Civil War, they actually had wars on ancient ancestral lands, and they did rituals to subjugate or diminish the power of the ancestors there, and they actually put their own blood there to actually take over the energy grid that exists. So it's history, but it's also psychic and it's aggressive as electricity, and actually they have substates of society in the African ancestral Wi-Fi connection among ourselves. You think of us as a honeycomb network. The more of us that actually ties in the history, the energy level increases beyond the physical and time and space itself.
Science par excellence, bro.
Brilliant, brilliant.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, I've
Mama
heard.
Mosey, I heard you. Can't just one more.
Oh, well, go right ahead.
Thank you, sir. You see, it is amazing when we introduce science into spirituality and the understanding of our reality. For the most part, we as African people today don't do that. We do it limitedly when we talk about our great grandmothers and our ancestors in that realm, but we don't connect us as a family, as a unit. We don't connect the struggles of one to the other. It is why people who consider themselves successful in this European realm don't connect to African people who they consider less than. But we aren't less than. Our people aren't less than any level that we achieve, because you achieve it because of all of us.
Mhm.
It's no degree that you get that you got on your own. You got it because those who came before you laid a foundational step for you to achieve it.
Mhm.
If we don't understand the universal spiritual connection, then we will not achieve the racial liberation that's necessary. And we will continue to try to educate African people worldwide to who they are, even though they believe they know. Even though they believe they know. What I've heard tonight, and I do apologize because it took me a moment to get on. Thank you, Baba Mosley, for your assistance, and thanks the technical support who kind of like petered out again for recognizing that I was here. Our struggle is not just universal, but it is spiritual in nature. It is the spiritual concept that makes our accomplishments possible. Our ancestors believed that they should be all that their ancestors were, and that's what they laid before us. Our struggle to secure the lands is because we recognize that the detriment of our ancestral spirit realm is what the European wants to do in order to crush the spirit of African people who want freedom, and not freedom, but freedom, to create a government and a nation of its own so that we can speak to the world as Marcus Messiah Garvey and those ancestors proclaimed. Speak to the world in such a way that the world recognizes who you are, what you bring to the situation, and how you created the foundation for what they think they have today. African people, it is time to rise.
Yes. Right.
And you rise with the spirit of our ancestors and understanding the struggle that they put before.
Mhm.
We of UNIA-ACL 2020, and honoring that ancestral spirit, will exonerate the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey on August 31st, 2022. We will not ask a government to do it. We will do it, and we have to do it in the minds of African people.
Mhm.
So stay strong. Thank you, Baba Mosley.
Thank you, PG. All right, Sister Marsha, you were getting ready to do something?
No, I didn't know.
Okay.
Well, I did. I wanted just to raise,
Oh, yes, go right ahead. Yes,
I
so you
wanted to
want to talk
raise our
about that
latest,
new
I
book,
wanted
right?
to raise
Yes,
our latest book, The Bridge
yes, yes.
Carried Us
Go
Over.
right ahead.
So I'm hoping everybody will get a copy of the book. And this is our
I tried, but they ran out.
oh, we have some more now. And this was our first book, The River Road African American Community and its Moses Macedonia Burial Ground, A History of Terror and Resistance. And just wanted to remind everyone, we have an incredible exhibit at the American University Katzen Arts Center until August 7th. And it would be great if we could do a private showing of UNIA and have everybody come over to the American University, and we just spend some time together with our ancestors who are supporting this exhibit. So I'm hoping we can organize something like that.
Surely, surely. Well, what I've heard here tonight, speaking of spiritual, some wave went through everyone, and it seems like when one person speaks, another person is stimulated and it goes on. This is the kind of thing, well, this is what we call a conversation. This is the kind of thing that Freedom Friday loves, because, you know, you get the information coming out and you're not doing it under the stress of competing with people for about intellect. So, you know, this, of course, tonight, we're speaking about the resilience of a people, and we're speaking about the spirituality of a people, and we're speaking about what ought to be done to bring people together to understand, because not our folks not coming together in a sort of anger or in angst about desecration of our cemeteries is not good for us. You know, I don't know if I have to, in Montgomery County, go and snatch one of go up when what's his name again, from the county executive,
Mark Elrich.
Mark Elrich is doing his speech somewhere, and go snatch that mic from him so that we can get some attention. I don't know what it is to do, but you know, it's getting to that point, because, you know, he's been saying things that you know, mendacity is all I can say. He's mendacious and not to be trusted. I mean, and we just can't sit around and not say something about it. But we're doing it. This forum is one of the reasons why we can say we're doing it. And we hopefully we can get the attention of more people.
Baba Mosi.
Yes, sir.
I'm loving the wisdom and the energy that we all are sharing. But we have another very powerful parent body member on the line. Who
is that right?
Our High Commissioner General, Dr. Chinzara. And I just know, I don't know how.
I don't see her. I'm sorry, I didn't see her. But go ahead.
She's here, and I just wanted to allow her, because she's in the Virgin Islands, and the Virgin Islands is very, St. Croix and the Virgin Islands is very similar to Washington, D.C., where we don't have proper voter representation. And I know this issue around the ancestors is important to Per Unc. So I just wanted to, before we got off, if she didn't mind, if she wanted to chime in, so that we could.
I was very comfortable just listening to Alice strength. Give thanks, family. Give thanks, family. I was just holding sacred space. There's a lot happening in the region. I am so grateful to be in the presence of Dr. Marsha Coleman-Adebayo. You have no idea how much we've been following you from this space, because many of our cemeteries just get overgrown and just ignored. Yeah. We've been very fortunate to recently have representatives from the Society of Black Archaeologists come and delicately, and I'm going to say that very delicately, give that academic layer of engagement that is supporting some very powerful, very uplifting areas of respect for some of the cemeteries here, specifically on St. Croix, as well as in St. Thomas and St. John. And this is also what's going on there. And we need to be real clear, Baba, at least you all are like close to the capital of the country. We're still considered a non-incorporated, non-self-governing territory, AKA colony, but I like to say the nice version first, right? So it's real important that persons recognize that, because some persons don't really think of the Virgin Islands. Sometimes it's America when them say so, and then the other times it's Caribbean, and sometimes when them say so too. I'm very grateful for the amount of information that has been shared in this convening for Freedom Fridays. I'm just thinking that that's powerful, because not everybody knows what is going on in that area. The fact that you've published material, the fact that you have young people engaged as well as elders engaged, it sets an example. And I'm hoping that that framework of what has worked for you, for us, let me make sure I include myself, is going to let us be able to use that same type of framework, I don't want to use paradigm because paradigms are temporary, but that framework that we could use in other places, because it's happening all over, where people are desecrating sacred grounds where our ancestors are buried, and especially sacred grounds that carry the blood, the sweat, the toil, the labor, the energetics of our people. There's also a lot of support in a very quiet form that comes to you from places like Barbados, particularly around the Newton burial grounds, where most of those ancestors that are buried there, we do not know all their names, or even that they were even in an actual burial space. They were just shoved into the ground, right? And so there's a World Heritage level project in place right now in Barbados. And again, people are using the example that's been established right where you are in this. I'm going to say it wrong because my English is poor. Do you say their term?
Bethesda.
Say it again.
Bethesda.
Bethesda. Thank you, because I don't want to say the wrong term. But that is really important, that people they're watching, they're looking, they're learning, they're engaging. And we're hoping that we can be able to have some future, cooperative and collaborative engagements as well. There's people watching from Puerto Rico. There's persons watching from Trinidad and Tobago. There's persons watching from Grenada. You have persons watching even in Suriname and Guyana, because wow, this is happening right at the center of the so-called most powerful country in this hemisphere and possibly the world. And it's not being addressed properly for African ancestors. We all have to chime in. So please keep us in the circle. Keep us in the circle. Giving thanks, Papa Singler, and giving thanks, PG.
Ashe.
Jabo,
Thank you, Dr. Chinzara. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
and you can't ever say it wrong, because you're talking about our ancestors and the language is not ours.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, I'll say this, for us as a people, and my experience in going to places where, the ancestral burial grounds are not well taken care of. I don't remember where I've heard this, but it was said that you can tell a people by the way they respect the burial grounds of their ancestors. So when we see the burial grounds of our ancestors, even if it's by our own people, they're in our community, and it's overgrown, and people don't care, it means somehow we're not connecting either to our youth or to others about our history and about spirituality. Because of course, especially, I don't want to go into the religious part, but I know some people, when they get into a certain religious space, they tend to discard anything that may seem African, because for them, it has some relationship to witchcraft and all that sort of stuff. So when we hear about African burial grounds, I'm wondering if people are thinking in this kind of a way, in the sense that they don't have to relate because they don't want to relate to that space in modern times. Yes.
Baba Mosley, when you think about this, about his ancestral memory, they said that the Stanford said that the cerebral cortex has about 125 trillion synapses, and each synapse can store about 5 bits of information. So you're talking about the human brain can actually process about a half of 500 trillion bytes of information. So if you think about the number of ancestors that's in that burial ground, if it's in the thousands or the hundreds, you talk about almost like several million terabytes of data that we have access to. So that adds on another layer of complexity about why they're going through this effort. Because you think about in terms of today's technology terms, is that they actually prevent us from accessing all this information across time and space.
Wow. Well, I'm happy that we've had this conversation. It's coming on to that time when we when we have to leave. We've got, I guess,
If I may,
12
Baba
minutes.
Mosey,
And if anyone wants to
Baba
add to
Mosey,
what
if I
was
may,
said, they can go right ahead right now.
may I, Baba Mosey? Do
Oh,
I have permission?
certainly. PG, who's gonna stop you?
First to my scientific brother who gave the scientific terminology, and second to those who came on, including Brother Singor and Dr. Tenzera, who gave a historical and a human view of the science. You see, what we have a tendency not to do is connect the dots. And the dots that we need to connect is the fact that our ancestors didn't just live, but they continue to live. And therefore, that's why you have the terabytes of information that if we kind of link to it, it rises us to a new level. What we have done is cut ourselves off from our truth. What we are now doing is reconnecting ourselves to our truth. The Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, whom we stay connected to, and the men and women of the UNIA-ACL, whom we stay connected to, are a mirror of the race that we have to stay connected to. And that's it. And get me right, technical support. That's the terabytes of information. Because that connectivity allows us to rise above the oppression of an entity that is less than. Yes, sir.
Just keep it simple, man. Blacktricity, and that's what.
Well, see, I'm working with my technical support.
Science par excellence. I call it Blacktricity to keep it simple, and then we connect it because it's not just about us as a race. It's a universal phenomenon.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like, well, I don't want to stop you. Go forward. Go ahead. Forward.
No, but see, when information is expressed, it has to also be connected or it can be lost.
Yes.
And I don't want the information from my brother to be lost because we don't see how it connects. So in trying to help the connection from ancestral spirits to current spirits and what happened in between, which produces the level of commitment that is absolutely necessary. So yes, it is Blacktricity or Afrocentricity, however we want to say it. But what we have to do is connect to that energy, as my brother said, as you said, as Dr. Tenzera said, connect to that energy in order to elevate us to the position of controlling our own destiny.
Yeah,
I building our own nation. I'm gonna stop now.
I just want to stop. Baba Mosey, I know you got to take it, but Blacktricity is the universal phenomena that brings all life into existence from the Most High. So it's deeper than African centricity. Blacktricity is the connection of the Most High God, Mother, Father, God that created all life on the earth. And so I just want to clarify, because that's when I say Blacktricity, I'm not talking about us as a people. I'm talking about just what you said, and Brother Heru can take us through the teachings because he's an engineer, science par excellence, as Garvey taught us. But anyway, I will stop on that because y'all gonna hear a lot about Blacktricity, because not only are we branding it, we getting our young brothers and sisters pushing it so they better understand it's internal and you connect it to the external, which is the Most High, and you got to deal with the ancestors. And
you are the messenger of the ancestors.
Would you beg your pardon?
I said, and you are the messenger of the ancestors.
We all are. We all are. Everything living actually is. That's the whole point.
All right. Well, you know, as moderator, I want to apologize to anyone who thinks that some of the questions I asked, I may be somewhat critical or something like that. I'm just trying to prompt answers, and that is why I will go to the PG at this point, and say, you know, PG, Philadelphia, we speak of this playground that that is now on ancestral bodies. something that's so very historical when it comes to Africans in the America or in Philadelphia in the US, that it seems like there's a disconnect with the governing bodies of Philadelphia and African people in Philadelphia, that they can so disrespect them that they can put a parking lot on a cemetery and we are not having an uprising. Now let me hear you, my brother.
It's not quite a parking lot, but it's close enough. So I won't, that's not an argument. What happened is they built the playground before there was a conversation in the community in reference to our ancestral being buried there. You've heard of the movie of 12 Years a Slave?
Yeah.
We actually have a member of our race who had that experience, being snatched up from Philadelphia, enslaved, was enslaved for 15 years and then got freedom. He's buried at that place, that playground. We have challenged the government of two administrations, the government of a mayor of a Black man, and now the current mayor, to say this has to be changed. We have to fight this. So that fight is ongoing. But what has to happen, as we have discussed tonight, it has to be raised in the consciousness of African people in order for them to rise up and demand the change. What I've learned about governments, and I've dealt with them many times, they learn quickly how to say words to you that appease you, but then they do no action. We've technically had here in Philadelphia an architect who was of the other race do a scan of the ground to establish where our ancestors was buried, what building, where they were actually, and what could coexist. That fight has to become the fight of the community of Philadelphia, of the city of Philadelphia, and therefore we can win. Currently, that has, with all of the efforts, that has not happened. Our community, not the conscious community, our racial community has not rose up to demand that. If it was a Catholic cemetery, that community would have raised up regardless of color. We have to push the education of the value of ancestral spirits and strength. That cemetery was once earned by the first Black church in America and also in Philadelphia. Y'all know that church, Mother Bethel Church. That's who owned it first. And that's who buried us there. That's who then relinquished it to a junkyard and then reclaimed it and then gave it to the city of Philadelphia for what stands there now. We fight daily and daily to change that phenomena. But as my sister, my brothers, Dr. Chinzara, Brother Robert have said, it is raising the consciousness, the connectivity to the spiritual energy that will change it. You have to get angry and then focus that anger to change the situation here in Philadelphia that has been difficult to do.
Well, sadly, I think if Philadelphia, with all the guns they have there, can bring some attention to the plight of Africans, alive, or what's the term we use, Sister Marsha? In life and in death.
Transition.
Where are we going? This is a serious struggle. I want to thank everyone for being here this evening, for being on, and for your presentations and for your wisdom, your sharing of information, especially so to you, Dr. Marsha Coleman-Adebayo, president of Bethesda African Cemetery Coalition,
Thank you.
and Dr. Robert Stubblefield, who is it must be is he the top researcher?
He's one of them,
In
definitely.
I'm-
He's incredible. He's incredible.
Yeah, you know, yeah, for yes,
Well,
my
if he's
brother,
not, we're
I
gonna
thank
make
you
him
very
so.
much for your presentation.
We will make him one of the top researchers. If they don't want to see it, we see it. We make it so.
Yes.
So
Thank you very much for what you've
Baba
done.
Mosa, you must, when we say bridge, Robert
Pardon?
is the bridge. Robert is the build. Robert is the method of the bridge being built.
Yeah, yeah, well, yeah, well, you know, the theme of this Freedom Friday forum here, it's that bridge. So, you know, I again, thank you very much. And we have the co-host, the co-host who is the vice president of the Vision 330, Baba Congo. Baba Congo, would you like to say a word of appreciation and take us out?
Hey, greetings, everybody. Sorry that I was a little bit tardy, but great conversation.
Hold
we're-
1 second. All I'm seeing is your beard and your mouth. Okay, there you go. Now we're seeing something better. All right.
Anyway, anyway, and listen to everybody talk. I think since this is a worldwide thing, I think we need to pick a day of the year for us to come clean up our cemeteries, so that they can be something proud, and we can also learn a lot more history that we don't know about. I appreciate everybody's input. Every time we put these forums together, we don't know what direction it's gonna go. It always goes in a great path. Thank you for your participation, because I mean the other things you could be doing on a good weather Friday in the summer, and so therefore, but we do really appreciate all the input that's coming, and that's all I have to say right now.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Well, folks, it has come to that time, and again, I wish you well on your journey through the pathway of the cyber pathway, and I will see you next time when we again have our Freedom Friday forum, which should be the second Friday of next month. Okay, of July. July is a hot month, and we want to have a hot subject, and we'll let you know. All right, so thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you
care.
very much.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
All right.
Mhm.
Peace and love.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night. You can take us out, Harold. Dr. Chen.